Okay,
we're live.
welcome everybody. We live, Lottie? Seems like we are. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our third live stream in this series on ADHD. So just a reminder that this is a safe space for open and honest discussions about ADHD, which is a condition that affects millions of people worldwide. So we want to provide some valuable insights, share personal experiences, and create a supportive community for those impacted by the condition. And it's all in honor of ADHD Awareness Month. So last week we explored mental and physical hyperactivity, and this week we will be discussing concentration and organization, two areas which pose significant issues for those with ADHD. Concentration issues are often caused by neurotransmitter imbalances in the brain. So these are neurotransmitters, for example, like dopamine, which play a crucial role in regulating attention and focus. And in people with ADHD, the brain may have lower levels of these chemicals or an impaired ability to transmit and receive signals related to them. So this can make it really challenging to sustain attention on a single task. And individuals with ADHD also grapple with an overly sensitive interest filter, which means that our brains can become hyper-focused on things that we find intriguing, but we struggle to stay engaged with less exciting tasks. Organization can also be very difficult for those with ADHD, and this can be both mental and physical organization. People with ADHD often have issues with executive function skills, which are primarily mediated by the pre-frontal cortex. And executive function is the cognitive processes that organizes thoughts and activities, prioritizes tasks, manages time efficiently, and makes decisions. And while these skills develop over time, roughly from the age of about 2 years old, these can be things that we experience dysfunction with. So before we start exploring these areas, we just want to remind you as well that discussing mental health and neurodevelopmental disorders can be triggering for some. We encourage everyone to prioritize their mental well-being during this stream. And if you do feel overwhelmed at any point, don't hesitate to step away, seek support from a trusted friend or family member or a mental health professional, or use the available resources in your community. We are also aware that some people who have watched the session so far might suspect that they too have ADHD. Please remember that we aren't medical professionals, but people sharing our experiences, and we certainly can't diagnose you. And while self-diagnosis is valid, of course, some symptoms of ADHD can be present in other mental health challenges like depression and anxiety. So we do encourage seeking professional help to ensure that you're appropriately supported. We're also going to share a list of resources at the end of the session. As usual, throughout this live stream, we'll be taking your questions and comments, so feel free to share your thoughts and experiences. Your voice is important, and your questions could provide some valuable insights for others tuning in. All right, that's it from me. I want to introduce you today to our participants. I have my co-host Lottie with me. Lottie, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
I do. I'll take myself off mute. So hi everyone, I'm Lottie. I am a person with ADHD who was diagnosed just over a year ago. I work in ELT publishing as an editor, writer, and consultant in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thanks, Lottie. We've also got Kristen here. Would you like to introduce yourself as well, Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen. I was diagnosed at the beginning of this year. I've had ADHD my whole life and no idea why I was different. I'm an archaeologist and also teach English online and used to run a martial arts school as well. So all the many things.
Fantastic. Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Kristen, and thanks for joining us today. And JPB, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, so I was here 2 weeks ago. So if you saw me then, you know what I'm going to say. But yeah, I'm JP Gerald. I've been in education for 16 years. I was an English language education for about 9 years. Now I work in adult, like professional development at a nonprofit here in the States. Although I do write, I still write in the language space, and I write books and all that sort of stuff, and I have a podcast and everything. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'll just very briefly introduce myself. If you haven't seen me already, I'm Sarah, I'm one half of Eltonics, which is an online teacher development company, and we mostly work on things like teaching creative thinking and inclusive and diverse teaching practices as well. All right, so welcome to the session today. As I said, we're talking all about organization and concentration. Let's start perhaps with concentration and how ADHD might affect this in your day-to-day life. I'll open up the question to all of you. Whoever wants to go for it, please do.
I mean, right. I mean, I'll just be, you know, you can't do things when they're too quiet. Like I can't, you know. Frankly, the more I have to concentrate on one thing, the less I can concentrate on that one thing. Unless it's a hyper-focus situation, but most things aren't. So what I have done, and all these are all, as I got my evaluation, and I didn't mention I got diagnosed in 2021. These are all compensation mechanisms. I mean, I figured these things out before I got diagnosed, is what I'm saying, in order to best handle things. If I have to choose my distractors ahead of time. So if I choose my distractors, and they are, whether they're pleasurable or not, I mean, they have to be at least, they have to be a sort of mid-level of distraction, where I know that that is going to, you know, occupy the little monkey jumping around, but is not going to take over, right? I learned this probably in college, or I should say university for those other places. I remember writing my entire college thesis, and I had Law and Order playing in the background. It was always Law and Order. First, the time of the day, because it happened to be on every day from 2 to 4 p.m. And I would write for 2 hours, for several days a week, and I would get 2 pages done. Now I write a lot faster than that now. But it's because, like, Law and Order, it doesn't change, right? I've seen all the episodes, but it's pleasurable, and I can, like, turn back and forth, right? I can't really listen to music with lyrics, because then I want to sing. But I can listen to just audio, right? Just like background music, right? And that can work. I don't like, I need to sit near a window so I can look out the window and not look. There's a window right there, right? So I can look out, but not always look out the window. So it just sort of has to be, you know, somewhat interesting out there. So all these things are important for my ability to concentrate. And I developed all these things in a way that allowed me to succeed, I guess, academically and in certain professional circumstances. And then in certain circumstances, it didn't work. And it took me until the diagnosis to realize why it worked and didn't work.
This is interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, when we think of concentration and kind of, you know, I'm thinking of the students in my classroom, you think, what's it going to take to make them concentrate? It's usually things like silence, isn't it? Nothing else going on. I mean, look at how many of us take exams in those kind of really silent rooms, sitting in rows, not much to look at, not much to distract us with. So it's really interesting that in order to focus, then you've got to have these distractors present, and they've got to be really specific ones. Right, JPB, I'm just wondering if, I mean, you talk here specifically about writing. Are there any other everyday tasks that you kind of, I don't know, struggle to concentrate on, and perhaps might have other distractors for different task types?
I mean, you know, on the weekends, I spend almost the whole day outside with my son. I mean, unless it's raining or something. Or honestly, it was raining Saturday and we were still outside. I usually have a podcast playing in one ear, because at a certain point, as much as I love my son, he's 3, there's only so many things I can talk about with him, right? But I want to stay present. So I don't want to be so distracted that I like lose track of him. Not that he's very far away. So that's the kind of thing where, and it's got to be a certain type of podcast where it's not like a true crime thing where I want to find out what happened, right? It's like a movie podcast analyzing movies from years ago. So it's like, if I miss something, it's not going to be like, what happened? You know?
Yeah. So it's got to be something like fairly predictable that just won't drag your attention away from something else. And if, Kristen, to ask you the same question then, do you experience the same thing, sort of finding it really hard to concentrate at times? And do you have maybe mechanisms to help you out?
Yeah, hardcore identify with what JP just said. I also was, I needed music or something, but it couldn't be too edgy, nothing with lyrics. So I wrote most of my PhD to a band called My Sleeping Karma, because it's just like low key kind of guitar work sort of thing that just goes on and on and on. And it's got enough of a vibe that it gets you kind of energized and working, but it's not distracting. But yeah, noise cancelling headphones have been my safe space for my whole life, especially the big ones. Like I want ones that tell everybody, don't interrupt me. Yeah, totally. Totally. Exactly. And I still use them even if I'm on my own. If I put them on, and even if, so long as they've got the noise cancelling thing on and I can't really hear as well, they just put me into my headspace where I can actually focus if I need to do joined up thinking kind of focus work.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I get distracted with so many things, like that whole executive function, unable to prioritize. Like me making my breakfast, my partner had to laugh because it takes me ages to do it. Like when I said I need an hour to do breakfast, he's like, why? But it's because, you know, I'll go to the coffee machine and then I remember I needed to get milk. I go to the fridge and then I'm like, oh, that's right, I need to feed the dogs. And then I get that out and I've forgotten one thing, and I just do this circle around in my kitchen, slowly spiraling into finishing something. So something which I'd been doing again before I got diagnosed and found out afterwards it's actually a coping mechanism is talking to myself. Sorry, I almost lost my train of thought just then. Talking to myself while I'm doing things is just to keep me on track. So I sound a little bit crazy as I'm walking around, but it really helps.
And Kristen, are you talking about what you're doing, or are you just talking about something more general?
No, normally what I'm doing. Otherwise, it's like a whole new spiral gate. This is going to get started. So I'll be talking, trying to remember what I need, because that whole walking into a room and having forgotten what you came in there for, you know, having something you needed to do and then it's gone. If I remind myself, or I'm talking about it, or I'm just describing what I'm doing, it's a lot more engaged.
Yeah. And this is kind of like the burden on our working memory as well. Like what you just said then about breakfast really speaks to me. Like if I'm doing chores around the house, I mean, first of all, music is my best friend for all of this, but I'll start doing the dishes, get distracted by another task. I start then cleaning up after the dog, and then I'm outside in the garden doing something, and then I'm back in and I forgot that I was doing the dishes, and then the tap's still on. I mean, it gets a bit ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you developed, both of you, these coping mechanisms before you were diagnosed as well, which is something that many of us end up doing, right? Kind of trying to figure out what is it going on where we can't concentrate, and what do we need to do to help out. Lottie, how about you? Does this resonate with you as well? I see you nodding quite a bit.
Oh yeah, no, totally, all of it. Especially, I think, quite often I like total silence if I'm going to concentrate on something, like really concentrate. But then I also do use music or sound quite a lot. So to get the energy going, I might use certain music. To concentrate, really concentrate, I might use something without lyrics. So just acoustic or whatever, or classical, or also just white noise, I find really helpful. I don't know if any of you have tried listening to white noise. Yeah, it just really, like, it actually makes me feel calm when it starts. I just feel like, okay, now I can focus. Or audio books if I'm doing something that doesn't require me to think too much. But like JPB, I quite like stuff that I've listened to 1,000 times, so I know what they're going to say. If it's too interesting or it's new, I might get distracted. But yeah, everything you're saying about, you know, narrating what I'm doing, you know, like walking into a room, okay, why am I here? What am I doing? Get this ready, then do this, then do this. All sounds like super familiar.
Right. This then, I guess, you know, has interesting repercussions in the classroom, because we sometimes, you know, at least when I was at school, we weren't supposed to be doing anything else at the same time as concentrating on a task. I remember even as I was doing a teacher training course. I won't tell you which one or where, because it might expose people. But I remember in a feedback session not being able to concentrate on what the trainer was saying, who's giving us all feedback. So I was doodling stuff at the same time, because the only way I can concentrate, if it's on a task, if it's somebody speaking, I've got to doodle or like write stuff, but I am listening. And he got really annoyed at this and said, you're not listening to me, you're not concentrating, put your pen down, you know, look at me in the eye when I'm talking. And I thought, if I do if I do this, it's game over, right? Like I can't concentrate in these kinds of circumstances. So I'm wondering also, you know, when it comes to just concentrating on what someone else is saying, do you also have something that you've got to be doing in the background at the same time, like during meetings? Or Kristen, what about you?
Oh, 100%. I've realized I'm on the phone. Like working from home was a boon for me because I could turn my screen off and pace. I actually listen better to someone if I'm moving around or doing like housework. It's half the time when my friends call me. If I sit down and I'm trying to listen to them, my brain is distracted by being distracted or looking for something. If I'm actually doing something, it can do it. So it's how I manage to, but I'm also visual. I'm a visual and a kinetic learner. So drawing, highlighting, moving, hands moving, all of this sort of stuff. Those are all my strategies for sure.
All right, lovely. And JPP, you?
Yeah, I do a lot of little things like, especially in a meeting, like depends. Sometimes in a meeting you're talking the whole time. It's just a conversation. That's a little different. Then I'm usually able to stay in it. But if it's a thing where it's like agenda point 1, and I'm like, I'm not part of this one, all right. You know, because they're gonna take notes, right? So I'm, you know, playing a game or something, but because it's on the screen, like they don't really know. Even if I'm at the office, I have 3 screens, and they're like, oh, he must be working hard. He's looking over there, but I'm like playing a trivia game. Or if it's at home, like, you know, I just have a couple of windows open, but to play I'm still looking at the screen, right? It's just that
and we know exactly what you're doing right now as well.
So, you know, that's what I have to do. And if it's a situation where I'm just having a conversation in person, I'm just, you know, now at this point, I feel comfortable enough letting people know, or people either know me, in which case it doesn't bother them, or I let people know in advance, and in some ways it's kind of the test to see if it bothers them. That like, look, I'm probably gonna be looking all over the place while you're talking to me. It doesn't mean I'm not listening to you, right? And frankly, I end up remembering less of what people say if I'm forced to stare directly at them, because I'm focusing so hard on doing that I can't even hardly hear what they're saying, which is why, you know, interviews in person were always hard for me. I would end up doing well because there's things you can do. You can look down and it makes it look like you're thinking about your answer, right? So like they'll answer your question, you'd be like, right? And then I'm able to gather my thoughts and that sort of thing. Or, you know, but again, the compensation mechanism, I had to figure it out. And also, like, you know, if there's a time to just pull it all together and concentrate for 15 minutes, I can probably just do that to get a job, because it's a short period of time. But yeah, so.
There are 2 things I want to talk about. I'll tell you what the 2 are before I forget them. This is my mental organization. The first one is what happens when you're interrupted in a task. How do you feel? Because well, okay, that's the first thing that I want to ask about, and the second thing is you know, to do with how you feel after you've had to concentrate for that amount of time. So if we go to the first one, which is getting interrupted mid-task, as an example, for me, if I can't get back into the task then for a good 45 minutes at least. Like if I remember working in a really busy teacher's room, and of course, like part of my role is to kind of field questions and be there. But if I was working on a task and I received a question, that task has now died a death for a good hour, right? Do you experience this as well, Lottie? Do you have this sort of task interruption issue?
Yeah, no, totally. I think if I'm really focused on something, I want to be left alone to just get on with it. And depending on the context, you know, it can make me feel quite irritable if I get interrupted because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. But yeah, absolutely. Just kind of leave me alone, let me get on with it. If I'm interrupted, then it's gone. And it, like you say, it takes a while to get that focus back, definitely.
Okay. All right. And Kristen, do you experience this one as well?
Yeah, I experience it also for myself, just in general with task switching, let alone being interrupted. I need to reset every time. I can't expect myself to jump from one to the next. But if I get interrupted, I've learned that actually I won't get my head back into it, whatever it is. Particularly if I'm in a deep hyper-focus mode. If I'm not, then it's a little bit easier maybe to get back in. But if I'm in hyper-focus mode, or I was really engaged with what I was doing finally, and I get interrupted then, and I've got to pick up all those loose threads, it's better for me to just kind of walk away, take a walk, come back and do the whole routine, where it normally takes me a good 40 minutes, half an hour to get into work, and headphones on, music on, kind of clearing sort of space, whatever. Tidying my desk is half of my ritual as well, just to kind of faff until I can sort of settle. But yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
I guess if I'm in, sort of what we're saying, there's hyper-focus.
Can I just jump in a sec? Sorry.
What? Oh, sorry. I said if there's just sort of two different levels.
Like delay, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just going to say it now. All right. So there's two levels for me, right? If there's hyper-focus, like you're saying, Kristen, then that's a whole thing. And I don't know if this is something I can control, but I think with a kid and all that, it's like, I don't even let myself, if the hyper-focus feelings start, I don't even let myself go into him if he's awake or around, right? Because it's just not going to work, right? And it's not fair to him if I'm trying to hyper-focus and he's jumping around and he needs my attention. So, but that means every night once he goes to sleep, I'm not saying I hyper-focus every night, but when it happens, my wife does leave me alone, right? But because she's like, I'm gonna bother him, right? Because it was like at night, I'm either sitting next to her and we're watching TV, and if I bring my computer there, she's like, oh, okay, because it means like I had an idea and I get it out. But then the soft focus, which is like the rest of my life, where I'm sort of half focused on everything, it's not as big of a deal for me to be interrupted because I'm always just sort of in the middle of a million interruptions, so it's not as big of a deal. So like what you're saying, when I'm hyper focused, yeah, it's like an issue for me to be. For an obstacle to be thrown up, but this doesn't happen all that often because I don't know, I'm able to construct my life in such a way that I'm not saying the hyperfocus doesn't happen at other times, but it just doesn't happen unless I know I have a little bit of runway to use it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you're almost like creating a space where you can go into that, and that you're kind of mitigating these interruptions.
Well, it's like it's kind of like it's a feeling, because when you can start, it's like an airplane, right? You can start to feel it taking off, right? And I'm just like, am I gonna get on the plane? I usually use the train because I like trains. Am I gonna get on the bullet train? Or am I going to let it go by this time, right? If I am going to get on, then I'm going, right? And it means for the next hour, I'm going to do so many things. I'm going to do it in 2 days worth of work in that next hour, 5 different tasks really fast. And people are like, how did you do all of that? But if I know I don't have the time, there'll be another train.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I don't know if the rest of you get this as well, but that train analogy is a really great one, because sometimes I get this at like 3 a.m. and maybe I've got to like design a webinar or something, right? And the whole day, I don't know, I haven't been able to focus on this thing. I can't sit down and concentrate. There's lots and lots of interruptions. And then at 3 a.m. I'm like, wait a second. I'm in the zone, and then I'll get up and do it, which can be quite odd for the people who I live with, who are kind of going, what are you doing? Why are you up at this time? It doesn't have to be work. It could be sweeping again the yard, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but sometimes when it hits, you've just got to go with it. There's a really nice question in the comments, which is this, and I wonder any of you jump in and answer this. If there needs to be an interruption, is there a good way to go about the interruption? I'm thinking here about acknowledging and supporting colleagues and friends with ADHD. So what would you suggest for this? If you've got to be interrupted, how should somebody do this?
I would say, please don't interrupt me at all. Like if I'm really focused, because any interruption will just be too much. I think maybe like planning out, if you're having to interact with someone, like I'm going to be working from this time to this time, you can talk to me at this time, would be a good way of going about it. But for me personally, like I would prefer not to be interrupted at all. However, I know that I have to interact in a world of like neurotypical people, And so therefore, you know, like, just have you got a minute is not a bad way of interrupting. And then people can say no. I think that's my opinion. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing I'd say is just to ask yourself whether that person does need to be interrupted. Half the time it can feel like it, or maybe it seems like it needs to happen, but if it can wait, let it wait until they've stopped themselves. I know for me, like, in a way, there's almost no good way. Once I get interrupted, it's gone. But I think if you do it with the little, when you've got a moment, I just want to see you. And that's enough that my brain can kind of maybe dip out of it and maybe I can still get in. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any easy way to fix it. But
I think it depends on the what it is, right? Obviously, yeah, it's better not to do it, but I feel like it doesn't bother me as much if someone's simply telling me something, like giving me information, right? Because I could choose to care or not care, but that doesn't stop me as much as if you're asking me to do something, right? To me, I get upset if you are asking me to do a task, an additional task on top of what I've already agreed to do while I'm doing something, right? If you're simply like, if, for example, like an email isn't like, how do people know what I'm doing if they send me an email? I'm not going to be mad that someone sent me an email saying, hey, just let you know we have a meeting at 4 o'clock or whatever, right? That's not gonna, I can't be mad at people for that. You know what I'm saying? But if you're like, hey, can you do this? No. So it's just not right now. And and then something happened a few weeks ago where the person didn't really do anything wrong in this case, right? But because I was hyper focused, I was like, well, I have to do this right now, I guess. She asked me to prior to my explanation of my job, but like I had to change something in one of our like assessments that I created because there was a slight error. And the thing is, there were 6 of them. It was like duplicated, but I had to go in and manually change it 6 times. She was not saying I'd do it right then and there. In fact, I probably could have waited a month. But I said, if I don't do it now,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So, you know, just like now I have this to do, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, and that creates overwhelm as well, right? Like if it's an actual task that you've got to do on top of the one that you're already doing, for me, I become really overwhelmed by that. I mean, I don't know. I think, yeah, we work. Many of us work in, you know, offices with other people, and sometimes you do have to interrupt, and that's the fact of working with others. But maybe it's about, you know, if you do have a colleague with ADHD, having a chat with them and say, you know, if I need to interrupt you, how's best to do that? Because I think we've all mentioned different things. Like Lottie's saying, absolutely not. In my case, I don't mind so much, but again, don't tell me to do something. Tell me that you need to speak to me, but also tell me what you need to speak to me about, because otherwise I'm going to stress out what that is, right? So perhaps just asking that colleague, you know, if I need to do this, how best to do it. One thing I'll say here though is don't interrupt me. It might be different for the rest of you, and tell me how to do something, right? I'm just thinking of, you know, again, I don't know why household chores is coming up so much for me today, but you know, I remember an ex-partner of mine telling me, you know, how best to mop or to hoover mid-task, and that for me, that interruption was that was the end of that task, because just let me do it my way and then tell me later how, you know, how maybe I should have done it. I don't know if that resonates with any of you, but and then going then to once you've been interrupted, even if you've interrupted yourself, I don't know, something has interrupted you, a noise, a sound, do you feel this kind of frustration, this sort of, I've lost it?
yeah, I don't know what to say except for yes, it's like
Yeah.
super emotional frustration.
Yeah, but it's an emotional response, right? It's not simply this is slightly annoying and I've got to get back on task. For me, the emotion is one of real huge frustration that I've then got to kind of calm myself down from. I don't know if you feel that too.
I mean, it's the same sort of thing as like the flash that comes when you stub your toe, and it's just like that same emotional thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. If we think now about organization, and when we're thinking, it could be physical organization, like of your space, or remembering what things to pack in your bag, or organizing a trip or whatever. It can also be mental organization, remembering things and recalling information. Is this something that you feel really affects your day-to-day life, having ADHD?
I mean, yeah.
I actually spaced out there and didn't hear the question.
Sorry, Lottie?
I spaced out there and didn't hear the question. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, of course I can. So about organization, whether that's mental or physical organization, is this something that really affects you in your day-to-day life? And if so, how?
I mean, for me, when I have to take my dog to the vet in a minute, and what I've also learned is that if I have to do something imminently, I get much more distracted because I'm thinking about what I have to do in a second. Because I'm just like looking at them like, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's more mental for me. I just have to write everything down to an annoying degree. Like I write down lunch. It's not that I'm going to forget because I'm going to get hungry. It's more that I have to remember, like, you got to start the kettle at this point because I usually make some like noodles or something, right? And if I don't remember to do that, then I'm not going to remember to take my dog out. And then, like, and then, like, I'm going to get all these things done, but then they'll be all jumbled and it won't work. And then, like, I have something to do afterwards. It's like, and so that takes up a lot of energy if I had to try to remember those things. So I write everything down and I have like 3 different calendars because I have one for work and I've got one for the rest of my life and I've got one for my other job, right? And then I have to plan the planning, right? Sometimes in my calendar, it says plan the next week, right? I just wrote down something for January because I have the books I have to write and I'm writing like, you will start writing on this day. I wrote that down last week for February 1st. And I planned out all of the research I have to do. People wonder how I'm able to write so fast. It's like the writing is the easy part. It's everything that leads up to it.
Right,
That puts me in a position to be able to write.
Yeah. But you see this level of planning. I mean, what I just showed you there, I won't hold it too close because you'll see all my secrets. But this is how I have to. This is the only way I can function in a day. Is this? And you're right. It could be I've got an appointment here and I've got to take XYZ documents and I've got to leave at this time and this is how I get there. It could be, I've penciled something in for January, February already as well. And it's the only way it can work. And that planning of the planning and so on, again, takes up a lot of time, right? And it can get a little bit stressful. Kristen, do you have a similar with? Go on, JPP. So. Yeah. Hope your dog's okay. We'll see you soon.
No, just check up, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Let us know. Thank you for joining. Kristen, is this something that you do as well? Sort of,
very much.
Planets?
It's something I suck at, but it's something I've had to get disciplined about, and particularly since I also have one of the other things that I have, like many ADHD comes with friends, is what they say. I have PMDD, which is a hormonal dysphoria that not only I got diagnosed because of the severe emotional, suicidal ideation and other things that happened. It was very extreme and I couldn't trust my own reality. But I got diagnosed with that back in 2020. And since I've been diagnosed with ADHD, I realized my ADHD goes into hyperdrive for 2 weeks of every cycle as well. So it's all tied into my hormones. So I've actually had to, with a very good friend of mine who helped me, he's got a lot of experience in organization in general. There's this whole way of planning and preparing for when my hormones are at a point where I can barely function, even with medication, and trying to kind of keep me focused. And it's about like being realistic, not putting too much into the days when I'm like on fire, like, then I pack that day full and I reserve my thinking for that. But it's like my Achilles heel has always been organization. Bullet journals worked better than any other system for me, which turns out it's designed by an ADHD person. I didn't realize until now. So that worked, but I used to just kind of be like, oh, well, I've lost control again, and then just kind of pick it up again months later. But now I have to be like, religious about planning. I plan at a particular time in my cycle. I've got that time reserved, nothing else there. I have a whole 3-part system for organizing it, and it's like really hard because it doesn't take much to lose control and to go off plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And two things I want to come back to, but the first thing is when you lose control of one thing, it does have that domino effect, right? And then the day becomes almost a write-off first and foremost, which is really stressful.
And you mentioned, sorry, I just did the interrupting thing. But you mentioned as well the physical thing. It's like, for me, my domino effect starts with my physical space. If my physical space gets out of control, which can happen, all it takes, right now I've got no water. My island has had no water, or my village has had no water for a few days, and my dishes have piled up. Everything snowballs from there. And yeah, it's like the catch-22 of what we need to focus better is a really tidy, organized workspace and house space. What we can't maintain is a really tidy space. Yeah.
And the snowballing thing has kind of hit me there a bit, because I feel like I need to be really, really on top of my physical space in terms of cleaning. I mean, I think we all live with animals, right? So it's a blessing in many ways, right, to have an animal, but also you've got to be extra on top of things. And yeah, just one thing, I don't know, I haven't cleaned my desk, and then suddenly and I don't know how, it's like you blink and the whole place is in chaos, and then that's the end of your working day. You just can't move forward. I
use that actually as a way to, sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, actually, in the same way that can be the start of the chaos, I've found that can also be the start of bringing it back, is if I start just by starting on cleaning up the space or cleaning one thing, organizing one thing.
Right.
It all starts to kind of come back there as well. But yeah, it's hard.
Kristen, I want to revisit in a moment, if you don't mind talking about it, the PMDD as well. I just want to go to Lottie first to ask her how she experiences organization or lack of, and is it connected to something specific, like your physical space? Is it more mental, Lottie?
I think absolutely agree with everything that you said. I have to be 100% on top of things. I've got, an Excel spreadsheet, and then some, a paper diary and various organizational systems. And the physical space is really important. If it's chaotic, then I really, really can't focus. But as you say, having pets, there's always like a level of chaos going on. I think what I found really useful is building myself in extra time, so, there are days when you're kind of on fire. So if you have 3 days work to do, allow yourself kind of 5 days to do it, because that way, if you have a day where you lose your kind of concentration or organization, if you have that moment where things start feeling a bit chaotic, you can just like take an afternoon if you have to. And then you'll still get your work done on time. I don't know if either of you do that.
I'm not that organized. I wish I could do that. That sounds great. I should be doing that, but no.
I think publishing I think publishing kind of enforces organization, because everything's so scheduled. Everything has to be done by a certain date. So that scheduling actually, although it feels quite constrictive, is actually quite helpful, because you know that you absolutely have to get this thing done by that date. So it can help you in planning your time a little bit better, I think.
Right.
I just want to add on to that one. Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Kristen.
If I can, just to add to that, it's the buffer zone. I do that, but I used to not. I used to have this really unrealistic idea. I still do. I have to work against it. This unrealistic idea of it will only take me this much time, because it's based on my optimum perfect case scenario, and the perfect case scenario doesn't work. And I've had to learn, like you described, to give myself, and I basically round up everything, whether it's in budgets. So anything feels like a win. If I come under budget for my money, it feels like a win. If I come under budget for my time and planning, then it helps just not having that negative drain of feeling like you fail to keep up with things.
Yes.
Could I jump in and add something as well that I think is quite important? That I think what I'm hearing is that we've all found ways of organizing ourselves, and actually in aspects of my life, I can be super hyper organized, but that takes, so quite often in work, I will be quite focused, but it means that it's to the detriment of other aspects of my life. So I need to be really organized. And I think a lot of us have this, you know, we need to be organized, therefore we do. And we can, you know, sometimes come across as super organized people, but actually the rest of the life is, you know, slightly chaotic because it takes so much focus and energy to keep concentrated and organized for work. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I hit burnout I actually had medical burnout from basically trying to keep that facade up for too long, and you push it. There's a price and a cost, and I pushed it into my personal life and everything, and it nearly destroyed me. So it's also why we're not diagnosed. So many people aren't diagnosed for so long, is because, you know, we're doing okay, but we're not. It's like I would break out in psoriasis and stress rashes after exams and things. Everyone thought I was a star student, but like I was destroying my immune system just to get across those lines. And it's the same with the organization. So it doesn't come naturally to me. It's the hardest thing for me to do. And I just want to also add, I can't trust my brain. So on top of all of I use hard copy. I've got my bullets journal. I have my planner. I've got like a system that I have, and I've got a memory board where I just put anything that comes into my brain. It's got magnets, and I just throw them on there. But then after all of that, I have to sit down and spend time to put things into my calendar, because I forget people's birthdays. I forget that I had to take, you know, I've got to go to the bank tomorrow, and I've got pop-up flashes coming up every 5 minutes from now to keep it in my brain, because I can't trust my brain, no matter how important it is to me. And people think that it means you don't care, but it's like it really matters to you, and you can still forget. You're like, oh, I knew it was Wednesday. I didn't realize it was the 8th. It's just
it can have a really, really negative impact on the part of your life that is suffering because of this. So wherever you're putting your focus and trying to be super organized, which for me is also to do with work and studies, but particularly work, like I don't think, touch wood, I've missed a work deadline before, but my personal life has suffered as a result. And by that, I mean, you know, not getting organized enough to buy a friend a birthday gift on time, or missing the day almost completely, or, you know, so other parts of your life kind of suffer because of this. And I don't know, sometimes you then start to wonder, how are other people doing this? How are they keeping up work, maybe studies, a family, perhaps, if, you know, whatever form a family takes, friendships and so on, or even sort of getting it together to respond to friends' messages. I'm really lucky that I have really good friends who you know, are very tolerant of this, but I might reply a month later because somehow my focus has gone, or has needed to gone elsewhere. And I think this brings up, you know, a lot of feeling of shame that we have. Why can't I get it together? I find that with a lot of people who have ADHD, shame is something that, you know, is a feeling that we all have, right? I do want to take it back at this point to people who have ADHD who also menstruate, because Kristen, you were saying that this, you know, times in your cycle really affects how well you can concentrate, how well you can organize yourself. Are you okay to tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, sure. It's something I wish I'd known about it earlier. I managed to kind of not have the diagnosis for a while because I was using hormonal contraception, but that had other problems and masked a lot of other issues. And then I had almost like an allergic reaction to an IUD as well. And it's probably, there's not enough research. Nobody knows about it. So I'm actually a big believer that people who menstruate need to know about the hormonal side. I mean, everybody does. It's not just people who menstruate. We've all got our hormones affect everything. And if you have ADHD or something else, it's affected by your hormones. So yeah, for me, it's only something I've become kind of really recently aware of, just how close the connection is. And I started reading about it, and it turns out there's a really high, people with autism, huge correlation between autism and ADHD, and people with PMDD, huge correlation as well. And unfortunately, things like even your meds won't necessarily work as well during your luteal phase. So after you ovulate and before you menstruate, those basically 10 days to 2 weeks, it can be hell. And my medication for it takes away the emotional stuff and helps with the dysphoria, helps keep me grounded in reality. But it doesn't change the attention levels. And so my ADHD, even a lot of my coping mechanisms don't work. It's hard to even stay focused mid-sentence. I'm losing my train of thought. Anything can distract me. It's a lot harder. And if I'm honest, it's been really depressing because it's been making me wonder whether or not I can even do some. I mean, like I'm an educator. I teach at university settings. I teach privately. I run archaeology tours. I do archaeological field work. I write my own research. And there's a lot to try to juggle, which I made because I get distracted by things. But then trying to kind of actually achieve something when 50% of the time you are so deeply dysfunctional, it's really depressing. But the good news is especially now that there's a lot more women with ADHD doing research, most of it's driven by people who have had ADHD or PMDD or both themselves. And are like, we need to look at this. So I think the first study was only like, I can't remember, it was 2019 or 2021, that recently, that connected the two.
Imagine this, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, women's health has been really grossly neglected for a long time. Same with like people of color and things like that. There was, a guy did this amazing publication about like rashes presenting differently in different bodies. It's hard for those of us living with these things now, but it does give me hope for younger generations. Like my nieces could very well have the same conditions I do. That runs in the family, but I feel hope that they're going to have better research then. But yeah,
and I think this is important
bit.
as well.
It's very...
No. Thank you for sharing this, because it's not just about talking about ADHD, in fact, but it's also what's kind of comorbid alongside ADHD that I think we all need to have awareness of. What else might exist alongside that, or what perhaps we are more predisposed to. And we've got an interesting question here from Francesca. I'm not sure I can answer this. Maybe Lottie or Kristen, you might. Does anybody have any experience with thyroid problems and ADHD in terms of their combined effects?
I don't personally, but I do know someone who has got ADHD and has got that. So I can't speak to it, but I think when it comes to hormones, there's a strong correlation between the two. That's all I know from my research, but I can't speak to that specific one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that might be a question for a medical expert, an expert in ADHD for sure. But thank you for the question, Francesca. While I'm there, thank you also for all your comments in the comment box as well, for sharing your experiences. Also, but yeah, I mean, I think this is really important to note, isn't it, that there are certain things or certain times where ADHD symptoms, I don't even know if the things that we experience as people with ADHD are exacerbated. They really get worse from certain things. I mean, the only thing I can speak to is when I'm very tired, then I can't string a sentence together. I can't think straight. I get very irritated with myself that I'm losing things, or something's in my hand and then it's not. So if you've got added things going on, then this can absolutely make symptoms even worse. Just a last question. And this is because we're educators rather than medical professionals. It's about, in our classrooms, what can we do, or what do you think would help students who have ADHD with their concentration and with their organization? Is there anything that you kind of build into your lessons, any techniques that you use to help students in this way, or anything you feel might have helped you when you were at school?
I think for me, I mean, it's funny because there's a bunch of my students who actually officially or unofficially have it. And it helps, first of all, having open, honest, safe conversations, letting people know. I actually talk about my experiences so people feel they can come forward. But also, like, because everybody has slightly different things that challenge. So if I've got a student who's hyperactive and they need to move, or if they need to not pay attention, like looking out the window, I let them do that. I also try to make sure that, but I work slightly differently when it comes to either archaeology, where a lot of the times when I'm teaching, you can connect it to either visual stuff or material physical practice. It's easier to help people with ADHD focus doing those things. And when I teach English, it's in one-on-one classes. So, and I tailor all of my content to each student. So I build their own set of materials based on their interests. So I try to make it needs to be interesting and engaging, or else you need to have deadlines that you respect, something that can kind of get you to cross that. But yeah, the other thing though that I also do recommend to students is, if they can, is to pair up with someone as a body double when they're doing their homework, because actually if you're both sitting there working, that is, not sort of sitting there sort of distracting, but actually it was something that was really looked down on, because it was presumed that the chatty people, because I was always the chatty dreamer in school, you know, that you can't just leave them alone with someone because they'll just chat. But actually, if we're both working, I get in the zone through osmosis by other people doing it. So I don't know if that really helps, but I normally just try to find out how it presents with each person, what their personal struggles are, and where I can accommodate it and build it into class.
The body doubling is fantastic. I think that's the only way I really got my master's done. And I think just a comment about deadlines. I think we intuitively, and even though I have ADHD as a teacher, I intuitively kind of feel that I should be flexible about deadlines. But flexibility with deadlines is a no-go for me as someone with ADHD. So it took me about 8 years to do my master's because, well, I don't want to blame my university. It's not their fault, but they were so flexible and lovely with deadlines. And then that kind of makes me go, well, I'll just push it one more month then. But as soon as you have this very strict, you know, there's no leeway here, you've got to do it by this date, then, you know, I can get it done. So I think even having strict deadlines is something to help students who have ADHD, obviously speaking to them about this as well. Lottie, do you have anything to add there? What would you recommend us do as educators to help our students with concentration and organization?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not teaching, so I'm a little bit away from the classroom, but I think what you're suggesting is really important, to actually ask the students what they want and what helps them, if they're able to articulate that. And if they're perhaps, you know, too young to kind of work that out for themselves, then trying out different techniques to help them organize themselves, you know, until you kind of find something that works. I think also just to be really sensitive about how you approach it, because if people try to organize me, I get quite a strong emotional response, and it's that shame, you know, of just or it's connected with a feeling of shame. You know, if someone tries to organize me, it can feel like criticism. So I think just as teachers to be really sensitive and careful about how you approach sort of helping people to organize themselves, so that it doesn't feel like criticism and you're not imposing what you think will work for them. Yeah. So coming back to what you were saying, Kristen, not listening to the students as well. And they probably have techniques that work for them, you know, like lots of us do. If they're a bit older, they've probably worked out, you know, what really helps them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then respecting that, right? We'll bring it to the end there. Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you also to JPP, and I hope his dog is all okay in the checkup. But thank you for your insights, and of course to my co-host Lottie as well for this session on concentration organization. Next week, we are going to be talking about sensory overload, emotional regulation, and rejection sensitivity. I think a few of our people who watched the webinar last time had quite a few questions about rejection sensitivity. So if this is something that you want to know more about, then absolutely tune in next week, same time, same place, to find out more. I'll leave it there. Kristen, Lottie, any last words?
Just thank you both for organising this. So
it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, I'm totally ADHD interrupting. I just wanted to say, to kind of leave this session by reinforcing that, you know, just because we might have challenges with concentration and organisation, we've often overcome them and can do, you know, really well in work situations. And it's actually quite, you know, I felt quite nervous today about sharing this, because publicly saying you struggle with organisation and concentration could affect your employment possibilities. So I kind of want to leave the session by saying, you know, just because it can be a challenge doesn't mean that we haven't worked out tips and tricks to kind of manage our lives as well.
Yeah.
Can I actually add on to that too, and just say it's so important that employers actually recognize that it's, you know, if you keep trying to put that round peg in a square hole, it's not going to work. But yeah, you know, I have one of my ADHD students, her work won't let them use noise cancelling headphones. She's been going into the bathroom to go and actually get her focus time. So to actually work in a bathroom, like, that's just insane. It's work with us. It's the only thing. You'll get a really good result because of our associational focused brains. If you just work with us, it's
absolutely. I think that's right, isn't it? We all have these different coping mechanisms, so just respect it, and the results will be, you know, will kind of speak for themselves. But yeah, making sure we're kind of, you ask us and respect kind of the way in which we work. So yeah, thank you for those last words. Thank you to all of the people who were commenting and asking questions. We will be posting some useful resources at the end of the session as well, so do watch out for those, and we will see you all, we hope, next time. Have a good rest of the week and see you soon.
Thank you.